Okay, let's jump into this. We've got a pile of information here. And right off the bat, there's this really dramatic situation, isn't there? A star player having an amazing season.
Like trophies, goals galore.
Exactly. And the reports say he's really not happy with the club. That just hooks you in immediately.
It really does. Shows that side of football. Performance is one thing, but the business behind it, well, that's another story. We're talking about Viktor Gyokeres at Sporting, of course.
We are. And then there's the other side of the coin, isn't there? A huge club, Bayern Munich, going after their absolute dream target, Nico Williams.
And finding it's, well, tougher than maybe they expected.
Right. It's never simple, is it? These aren't just straight deals. You've got negotiations, maybe different ideas about what was agreed, player feelings, club finances. It's all in the mix.
Absolutely. So for you listening, this deep dive is basically about getting you the core info on these key transfer stories happening right now. We'll unpack that Gyokeres tension, look at why Nico Williams to Bayern is proving difficult.
Yeah, and we'll also touch on Barcelona maybe looking at a surprising low-cost option in Gyokeres and Perisic.
That's right. And also, Chelsea seem to be making quite a few players available. A significant number, actually.
Okay, so our mission here is really to dig into the sources you've gathered, pull out the key details, the insights, and give you a clear picture of what's actually going on behind those headlines.
And look, if you appreciate getting this kind of direct insight, cutting through all the noise, make sure you're subscribed to the Football Pulse channel. It really is the best way to keep up as these things develop.
Definitely worth doing. Right, let's start with Gyokeres then, because that story is just, well, it's got layers. We thought we knew the deal, right, based on what the player side was saying.
The agents, yeah.
There seemed to be this understanding, maybe not written in stone, but an agreement with Sporting's last director, Hugo Viana, who's actually at Man City now.
Right, that's a key detail, the previous regime.
And that understanding was basically a guaranteed price tag this summer, 65 million euros. If a club met that, he could go.
Yeah, the player's side certainly believed that was the arrangement. Kind of a reward, for the season he was about to have, and did have. A clear path out.
But, things aren't looking that simple now. Sporting's current leadership, the president's gone public saying, nope, 65 million is not the price.
Not happening. They're asking for more. The source suggests more than 65 million euros. Probably looking for something closer to 80, maybe 85 million euros.
And this is where you get that player reaction. The source is pretty clear. Viktor Gyokeres is really not happy. Feels disappointed.
Well, you can see why, can't you? From his point of view, he delivered massively. An unbelievable season. Doesn't even quite cover it. What was it, 73 goal contributions?
Insane numbers. Goals, assists. He won them the league, the cup. Gave absolutely everything.
And the info suggests he wanted to leave on good terms, not in a bad way or a bad mood, which fits with that idea of a pre-agreed path. But now the situation is described as quite tense between players' side and Sporting, because the club's stance now just doesn't match that earlier understanding about the fee at all.
So who's watching this unfold?
Yeah.
Thinking maybe they can step in. Arsenal are mentioned, still on the list.
Keeping tabs, yeah.
Manchester United seem very keen. The source says they're calling on a daily basis. That sounds pretty persistent.
It does suggest strong interest, definitely. And then there's Italy, Juventus specifically named.
But with Juve, there's always that financial angle, right?
Always. It's noted as financially complicated for them. Unless, and this is the big if, they sort out the Dusan Vlahovic situation first. That could free up funds.
Okay, so the real takeaway here is this clash, isn't it? The player feeling, hey, we had an understanding, especially after he smashed it on the pitch.
Right.
Versus the club's current board saying, well, market value now based on that season means we want more. It really throws up questions about how much those sort of informal agreements actually count for in football today.
It's a fascinating tension. How much is a previous director's word worth versus the current market reality and a player's incredible performance? That's why it's labeled a really tense story. Definitely one to watch.
Yeah, you wonder how the agents handle that disconnect too. Okay, let's shift gears completely. From a striker potentially stuck over a fee, let's talk wingers. And one winger in particular who seems to be maybe holding more of the cards.
Nico Williams. Despite all the other winger names flying around, the source is pretty adamant that for one specific big club, he's the priority and dream target.
And that club is?
Bayern Munich. Max Eberl, their director, is apparently the one really driving this. He dreams of signing Nico Williams.
Especially now with Leroy Sané off to Galatasaray. The source put a "here we go" on that, so it's done.
Yeah.
Creates a space, I guess.
Exactly. A clear need, and they've identified their man. Bayern are prepared to go strong to try and get him.
Okay, sounds promising for them. But the source immediately adds, not going to be easy for sure. So why? Bayern's a giant club. The release clause is supposedly around 58 million euros. That feels doable for Bayern?
Well, and this is interesting. The fee itself, that 58 million clause, that's apparently not the biggest problem here.
Oh, so it is.
It's the salary, the crucial point, according to the source. Nico Williams is already on a big salary at Athletic Bilbao. So when you add his wage demands onto that transfer fee...
Oh, the whole package.
Exactly, the total investment. That's what makes it financially difficult, even for a club with Bayern's resources.
Right, the overall cost, not just the transfer ticket. And there's another hurdle mentioned too, the player decision.
That's key too. Ultimately, Nico has to decide what he wants. Remember, he chose to stay at Bilbao last summer. He seems happy there. He's a star. Does he want to leave now or continue where he is? That's still apparently up in the air.
So Bayern have got the financial puzzle, and they need to convince the player himself. How are they tackling it?
They've been busy, it seems. The source mentions 2 meetings already. 2 direct face-to-face meetings with people close to the player.
Showing they're serious.
Very serious. Making include they want him, they're willing to put a proper financial offer together, even though they know the salary part is tough. But now, essentially, they're waiting on Nico.
And just to make things even more interesting, Athletic Bilbao aren't just sitting back, are they?
Not at all. The source says Athletic Club is prepared to offer Nico Williams an important new contract with, crucially, a better salary if he decides to stay put.
Oof. So that makes it even harder for Bayern financially and maybe emotionally for the player too.
It really does. It raises the stakes for any interested club, which might explain why, although Arsenal and Chelsea are also mentioned as having interest.
Yeah.
They apparently feel the deal is really complicated financially, particularly, again, on that salary front. Matching or beating what he might get at Bilbao plus the fee, it adds up fast.
So the insight here is quite different from Gyokeres. Bayern are all in, they've met the player side, but it's the high wage demands, coupled with Bilbao fighting hard to keep him with a counteroffer. That's the real barrier. And the player holds the final decision.
Precisely. It shows how player power, especially when they're happy and well paid already, can be a huge factor. Sometimes staying put is the strongest leverage.
Interesting contrast indeed. Okay, let's move from that high-stakes, high-cost pursuit to, well, something potentially very different. Barcelona. They're reportedly looking at maybe a very low-cost option. This comes via Mundo Deportivo, you confirmed.
That's the report, yeah. And it aligns with other info. Look, Barcelona need attacking reinforcements, we know that. But their finances are tight.
Understatement of the year, maybe.
Probably. So their dream target, Luis Diaz, source says, yeah, still the dream, but still too expensive, just not realistic right now.
Okay, fair enough. What about Marcus Rashford? He was mentioned too.
He's on the list, yeah. And apparently the player himself is very keen on the idea, so that's an option they might explore.
Right, Diaz the dream, Rashford a keen possibility. But then there's this third way mentioned, if they decide to go for a low-cost option.
This is where Ivan Perisic comes up. The source suggests that if Barça pivot to that kind of strategy, Perisic is one of the options being discussed. And the big draw.
He's a free agent.
Bingo. No transfer fee involved. Changes the whole calculation.
Okay, but Perisic, he's experienced. Surely he has offers already. He's not just sitting by the phone, is he?
He's not. He actually has a concrete offer from PSV Eindhoven, a 2-year deal, apparently on the table, and he's basically ready to sign his contract with PSV.
So, why hasn't he, if it's ready to go?
Because, and this is the fascinating part, he's waiting specifically because he knows he's appreciated by Hansi Flick.
Ah, the new Barça coach connection.
Exactly. Flick apparently likes the player, values his leadership, his experience, his numbers. The source makes the point that, yeah, he's not young, but he's still producing, still performing as a top winger on international stage.
So this isn't just Barça scraping the barrel for free agents. It's potentially a Flick-driven idea. He sees a specific role or value Perisic could bring, especially given the low cost.
That seems to be the angle. It's driven by the coach's assessment. But, need to be clear here, the source stresses it's not a done deal. Not even close right now.
All right.
It's something Barca's considering, but it's not the priority in this moment. Diaz, maybe Rashford, they're likely higher on the wish list if possible. But Perisic is there, Flick is very open to that, and crucially, Perisic himself is waiting for Barça.
So he basically hit pause on the PSV move just in case the call comes from Barcelona because Flick rates him. And the implication is, if he senses Barça are definitely going elsewhere,
then he'll likely sign that PSV contract. He's got a good offer waiting.
Okay, the takeaway there is how a coach's specific preference, even for a veteran free agent, can create an unexpected, potentially strategic, low-cost opportunity for a club like Barça when their top targets are out of reach financially. Shows that direct managerial influence.
It's a really interesting dynamic in squad building, especially under financial pressure.
Right. Finally, let's talk about a club that seems very focused on players leaving. Chelsea. Making some strong decisions, particularly about players who were out on loan.
Yeah, seems like there's been a real push in the last, say, 24 hours or so to clarify things, especially for those returning loanees.
And the evidence the source points to is pretty stark, isn't it? The Club World Cup squad list.
Telling. Basically, all the players who were out on loan last season, they're not in that squad, with one single exception mentioned.
Who's the exception?
Andre Santos. He's the only one included from that returning loan group. Excluding everyone else sends a strong message, as the source puts it.
Can't get much clearer than that, really. If you're not in that squad, your future's probably not at Stamford Bridge. Short term, at least.
Pretty much. And the source goes further, explicitly naming key players now considered available on the market or, even stronger, no longer part of the project.
Okay, hit us with the names.
The ones explicitly stated as no longer part of the project are João Felix,
Back from loan at Barça, yeah.
Raheem Sterling, Axel Disasi, and Ben Chilwell.
Wow. Okay, Felix and Disasi may be less surprising as returning loanees or players whose futures were debated. But Sterling and Chilwell, they're established first-team players. That, no longer part of the project, feels significant for them.
It does. It suggests this isn't just about trimming the loan fat, it's a potentially wider clear-out or reshaping of the squad. Chelsea are looking for solutions for these players.
And there are others mentioned, too, with slightly different situations.
Yeah, Kendry Paez, possibility of him going to Strasbourg. Matías Ukuchukwu looks like he will go to Strasbourg for sure. And George Petrovic, the keeper, Chelsea seem open to discuss things if he wants to explore options.
And just for clarity, Wesley Fofana isn't on the list because he's injured, right? Focusing on recovery.
Correct. His absence is purely down to injury and rehab. Totally different situation from the others being made available.
So for that main group, Felix, Sterling, Disasi, Chilwell, the message seems blunt. You're available? Find a new club. Chelsea's focus is heavily on outgoings.
That's the picture painted. Many players made available. It signals a major focus now on shifting players out, likely to make space or generate funds for their own targets.
So the key takeaway on Chelsea is this looks like a pretty decisive, maybe even aggressive clear-out is underway. Explicitly putting established names like Sterling and Chilwell on the market sends a huge signal about restructuring and the direction under the current setup. Shows how quickly things can change for players.
Very decisive moves, yes. Makes Chelsea's outgoing business one of the big stories to track now.
Okay, so quite a journey through these specific transfer situations. We've had the Gyokeres tension at Sporting, that clash between past agreements and present valuations after a stellar season.
Yeah, then Bayern's determined but difficult pursuit of Nico Williams, where the salary, not the fee, is the big sticking point, and Bilbao are fighting back.
Then Barça, potentially eyeing a coach-favored low-cost veteran in Perisic, who's holding off on another offer just for them.
And finally, Chelsea's big clear-out, making high-profile players like Sterling and Chilwell explicitly available.
Thinking about all these different dynamics we've covered, the player unhappy, the club holding firm, the dream target with high demands, the free agent waiting hopefully, the big club offloading big names, what really stands out to you listening in as maybe the most surprising or the most complex situation right now?
It really paints a picture of how messy the transfer market can be, doesn't it? So many factors beyond just player skill and club desire.
Absolutely. It's agents, past relationships, future finances, coaching changes. It's all in there.
You know, these situations really show how much the transfer market is this complex web of negotiations. Not just club to club, but club to player, player to club, dealing with past promises versus current realities. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much does a player really wanting a move actually influence things when the hard numbers, the club valuations, and maybe a changed stance from the club itself all come into play?
Does that desire overcome the financial hurdles or the club digging its heels in? Or does the money always talk loudest in the end?
Something to definitely mull over as we see how these stories play out.
Indeed. Okay, that wraps up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.